2016 has sucked. We did a whole video outlining this, death and the election and SJWs and other crap. But if there's one place where there was a lot of excellence in 2016, it was in music, especially whenever it comes to heavy metal music. There were a ton of bands that released fantastic albums that's going to be outlined and detailed in easily the most competitive and tight-knit top 50 album of the year list in history. Or at least the history of this channel. But before we get to excellence, before we get to talk about those that shine through the rest, we need to speak about those who had great intentions, either that or a lot of hype, a lot of hope, but was not able to follow through, that was not able to deliver, that essentially deleted all of our dreams of them releasing a good album here in 2016 and joining the pantheon of others who did. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the top 10 worst albums of the rock and heavy metal persuasion, this time specifically heavy metal of 2016. And we do have to start off with a couple of honorable mentions. Traditionally, this is a rock and heavy metal list, so I do have one rock album that was absurdly bad, even though it was hyped as their best. That was Revolution Radio by Green Day. This massive piece of turd was not the angriest that the boys have ever been, unless you want to call them the angriest, boys in a band that just sound like every other goddamn person on Tumblr. There you go. There's your Green Day album. And then there's also a fan pick honorable mention that is not on this list, and that's The Astonishing by Dream Theater. And I kind of agree with this, considering it was released very early on this year to high praise, including on this channel, but it has become one of the most forgotten about albums in 2016 whenever it comes to my own personal listening habits. So yeah, in a large way, it's disappointing in the fact that I really don't want to return to it. So on with the show, on with the actual list. Let's get started with number 10, which is Evergrey and The Storm Within. There were a lot of people that were upset that I didn't speak about Evergrey's last album in review form, so I definitely intended to do so this year, and did with The Storm Within. And what I was greeted with was an album that was entirely too bland, one that had some of the Evergrey staples, but at this point in time, all of those tricks are getting very predictable, and there's a lot that you expect from an album entitled The Storm Within. You do expect a little bit of chaos to go within the inner conflict, and then with many of these tracks, it just didn't sound like the real titles or the meanings behind them matched up very well with the music. And plus, once you get the predictable idea down of what Evergrey really does accomplish with their music, it's one that became easy to judge, it became very easy to see, and the result was a semi-smooth listen that just really didn't deliver. I expected more from these guys. That's principally why they're on this list. They would be left out probably any other year. Number 9, In Flames with Battles. This was a disc that got about an 80 whenever it was first reviewed, but once again, similar to Dream Theater, it's forgotten about. This is an album that had a couple of tracks that were pretty decent, and really, I think the score of 80 is trying to take into account that this is the band that In Flames is right now. But upon further inspection, this is an album that even fails on that level, considering it just comes off as extremely typical. It's a tedious album whenever you consider just how run-of-the-mill that it is. This is definitely more of a cash-in disc. It doesn't have a lot of, real unpredictability to it, with the exception of one track, and that's just not enough, really, to save this disc from potential obscurity before it becomes a legend. Which, well, that's never going to happen, so delete. Number 8, we have Whitechapel with Mark of the Blade. This was one that was bane of a lot of jokes whenever the first single came out, and whenever you heard the rest of the album, you kind of understood why. It was easily one of the worst tracks off of the disc, and the rest of it was not one that was able to really boost it up enough to give it a real prayer of a chance. This is Whitechapel really showcasing some downfall, and it's not exactly a good one. Hopefully, discs in the future by Whitechapel will not have the same resonance of steaming, crap that Mark of the Blade was really able to exude. But this was also one that could have been worse. It could have been their last album. But either way, this disc stunk, and it's one that's, again, easily forgotten about. Number 7, Asking Alexandria with the Black. They decided to go a little bit of a different direction, sort of a transitional album a bit for Asking Alexandria. However, that transition point, very similar to what we saw with a band such as Bring Me the Horizon last year, was not very well embraced, not very well accepted. A lot of times whenever bands like this take risks, their fans feel a little bit alienated because it's something that's not altogether what they expected. They are fickle, they have expectations and demands from the groups that they love, as opposed to really liking the creativity. But there is one thing that I have to agree with them with, and that's whenever it comes to creativity was concerned, this is one that should have been left in the can and not released. Either that or released as a B-sides collection. Wasn't all that good, didn't have a lot to offer, some neat ideas here and there, but that's not nearly enough. Number 6 is Woven War with Honor is Dead. This is the sophomore album from this post-As I Lay Dying project, whose first disc was fairly decent, whereas this one here feels exceptionally static. There was no real movement, and the movement that we got was very slight, it was very subtle, and it didn't have nearly enough to give it. It just felt very lifeless and dead on the inside. It didn't have a lot of those, real staples and trademarks that gave Woven War's first disc that real air of unpredictability. Maybe it's because we now understand what the project is all about, or maybe it's the fact that they just went in and released a hell of a bland album. Which way is that going to go? It really doesn't matter which way that it goes. Yo-ho, yo-ho. Where it actually went is right down the old train to shit-town, because that's where we are here, and Honor truly is dead, if this album's any indication. Number 5, Chelsea Grin with Self-Inflicted, which literally means doing something to yourself. So Chelsea Grin self-inflicted a bullet hole right to their own career with this album. Their last album, Ashes to Ashes, was absolutely awesome. It was a great disc, and then they come back with this third-grade vocabulary, Deathcore 101 bullshit. What the shit was they... What? I can't even speak words. Just talking about this album is decaying my own vocabulary to 4-letter words and vernacular that makes absolutely no goddamn sense. I sound like a freaking raving lunatic. But that's because that's what this album does to you. It's one that it makes you a raving lunatic because it's such a damn struggle to get through. It was a struggle whenever it came out. It's a struggle today. It's a struggle so deep that I couldn't even finish it a second time whenever I was trying to assume this list. But amazingly enough, it's only number 5. Number 4 is Attila with Chaos, and I almost put this above Chelsea Grin. Maybe in retrospect I should have, but Attila's just not a band that really resonates with me. The funny part about this is that even though it's number 4 on the worst album of the year list, it's better than it was. It's better than this band was in the past. So I guess that's progress. Maybe this means that 7 albums from now, they'll end up on the top 50 list of the year. Either way, though, Attila's brand of bro rock, or bro metal, of party metal or whatever, just, it feels really childish. It really does. There's some fun that's behind it. I do understand that. And the boys are pretty cool. I mean, whatever. Frankie Palmieri cool? That's you to be the judge. But whatever it is, this is just a brand that feels a little bit dated at this point as well. At least though the music was a little bit better, they did experiment out, and you know what? There's a semi-rap song on this album. Pretty darn good. Gotta give them a lot of props for that. That was taking a risk, and that was a risk that was worth taking. So good on you, but the rest of the album still blew chunks. Number 3 of Mice and Men with Cold World. Oh dear Lord Jesus Christ, this album. This was one that, really, their last album didn't get a lot of high praise from me as well, but they decided to go even more into the realm of what the hell are you doing? I don't understand what this band was thinking with Cold World. It was, again, similar to Asking Alexandria, meant to be a little bit more of a transitional album, one that was showcasing their new school philosophy and having little glimmers of what they used to be, and that balance was so off-putting, it was so jarring, there was such a disconnect between the two, it did not make a lot of sense, and really, going through this album feasibly from start to finish was an absolute challenge, and at times was an absolute bore. Not a chore, not CH, a bore with a B. This was a disc that really showcases that if Mice and Men need to return to that which they were very good at and that which they knew from earlier on in their career. Either that, or this is just symbolizing that this style of music is starting to either fall out of favor, either that, or the ideas have just simply run out, and now everything is starting to feel a little bit blasé, a little bit run-of-the-mill, a little bit typical. We know the playbook, and the playbook no longer enthralls us. Either which way, this was a dud, it was a stinker, but there's still silver and gold. Let's see who got the silver turd. Oh, look, it's our old buddy Jeff Tate, number 2, Operation Mindcrime with Resurrection. This is the second part of a trilogy of albums, the first of which was very, very good. Some people don't want to admit that it kind of channeled a lot of classic Queensryche. Well, those people are idiots. But Resurrection also was able to channel classic Queensryche. You know, the classic age of albums such as Dedicated to Chaos. You know, the bad ones. Because this one was exceptionally tedious. Very boring, did not have a lot of kinesis or motion to it. Seems like that's a theme. And it's also an album that hopefully, whenever the third part of the trilogy comes out, will just be seen as that transitional bridge between the first part of the story and the last part. Because if not, then they just released a, useless stinker of a disc that's all for plot development. It's kind of like a shitty sequel to a movie franchise. Either which way, Resurrection did not resurrect my hopes that Jeff Tate had turned the corner and all of a sudden had become a prominent songwriter once again. Instead, it resurrected my notion that I was perhaps right all along, that he's washed up and that his band, no matter who's in it, still has a lot of Jeff Tate influence within them, and what he finds to be brilliance is not. But that still leaves us with number 1. And for the second year in a row, see, I thought any one of these other 9 albums would be number 1. And that's because I forgot about number 1. Because I wanted to put it out of my mind as quickly as humanly possible. This is the main reason why I don't typically grade cover albums. But this one was so appalling. This one was so terrible. This one was such an insult upon the very idea of cover albums that it almost made punk ghost pop look good. 6 Feet Under, Graveyard Classics 4, The Number of the Priest. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? Last year, Crypt of the Devil, or whatever the fuck that stupid album was called, was the worst album of the year. And once again, here they are at number 1. This one somehow seems lazier and worse. The songs were already made for you. All you had to do was mirror what they did and put your own spin. It's not a hard concept. I could take Aha and turn it into gold. Are people going to want to buy it? Probably not. But it's going to sound good until I get to, day or two. That part. And that even sounded pretty damn good. But this, what the hell was this train wreck? This was abysmal. I don't understand how you blow a covers album. And here's the one. They've done it 4 times. And there's been like 1 of the 4 that has been passable or bearable. How is this possible? It's death metal. It's not hard. It's not hard to give it a little bit of that adrenaline. But somehow, some way, Chris Barnes sounds devoid of it. He sounds devoid of all adrenaline and devoid of caring. Devoid of giving a shit. And you know what? I don't give a shit about this band anymore. Am I going to cover their next album whenever it comes out? Probably. Why? Because it'll be on demand. But either way, this is the worst album of this year. Congratulations, 6 Feet Under. 2-time champions of the biggest shit award whenever it comes to metal albums. There you have it. 10 horrible albums, 2 horrible honorable mentions. What was your worst album of the year? Let me know in the comments below. Was there any that were missed? Let me know in the comments below. I am Cover Killer Nation. Maybe I'm broken Cover Killer Nation considering I had to listen to all of these. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care. Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. If you want to see album reviews of these and more albums from 2016, scope out the link to your left. The link to your right is going to take you to other top 10 lists done right here on this channel. It's definitely something we love to do, so scope that out. You can also subscribe to the channel and scope out the Patreon. I would appreciate it. I'm Cover Killer Nation. Have a great evening. Take care.